Well, joining me now is Assistant Attorney-General and Queensland Senator Amanda Stoker. Welcome, Senator. Happy New Year to you. I looked at this Voices of movement and the eerie parallels with the people that are backing them and the policy agenda they're pushing seems very similar to the Greens. Do you think my suspicions are right that this is a mechanism of slicing off votes in order to double the Green menace effectively in our parliament?
Hi, Cory, and Happy New Year to you too. I think that's exactly what it is. It's a smart tactical move from those whose belief set really does match that in the radical Greens party, but who want to give it a respectable, urban and kind of trendy image. If you want to be someone who likes a high risk redistribution, high tax, high spend, big climate scare campaign kind of approach, but you don't necessarily want to be wearing the crochet and going around in barefoot, then you might not find that the style of the Greens matches you, but it's a lot easier to get behind the celebrity kind of candidates that the Voices of types put up in our urban seats. Now, we should, though, as responsible Australian citizens, peel back the mask behind these candidates and look at what they really stand for. They stand for radical redistribution of the wealth of Australians using climate as the lever. They are backed in spades by those whose own financial interests align strongly with the solar and so-called clean energy movements. They are staunchly against the ability to have a mining job in regional Queensland or any part of regional Australia. And that has an impact, for instance, on about 1 in 5 Queenslanders whose jobs, once you take in the direct and indirect effect, depend upon our mining sector being strong. Pull back the mask and you've got a really radical bunch of people here.
Well, you do. You peel back the crochet mask. I can't get crochet out of my head since you've mentioned it. But what I can't get, Senator, is they say they're independent and they're reported as being independent by, legacy leftist media outlets. But in actual fact, they're a collective. They've got the same messaging. They've got funding coming from the same sources. And I can't find them challenging any Labor seats. It seems they're all trying to set themselves up in Liberal seats, which means they're not really an independent mob, are they? They're just targeting coalition voters.
That's exactly what they are, and it reflects a tactic that has been applied with different labels and different brands in past elections. I like to think that Australians are smarter than that, and they can see through what is window dressing. It's true that they can dodge electoral laws that require proper disclosure for those who are a proper political party. I don't think that's right, but as the law currently stands, that's the regime under which they operate. But it really does force those on the centre-right of politics to focus on what they really want for this country. There will be some people on the centre-right right now who are frustrated, who might feel a little bit disappointed for whatever reason is important to them, and they might be tempted to have a flutter with a party, maybe a Voices of, but more likely one of the other small parties on the centre-right, or indeed on the far right. And if they do so, they need to know that while it might feel pure in the moment, to be able to say, coalition, take this, ultimately what they deliver is a government that will be Labor, Greens in coalition. And that is a very scary and very dangerous thing for this country. Now, I'm one of those people who thinks those in our party who think we need to swing to the hard left in order to stay in are misguided. It hasn't staved off, for instance, a Voices of type campaign in some of our left-leaning MP seats. I think that's a tactical error. But nevertheless, those who are frustrated with those in the centre-right major party of the Liberal Nationals have to really focus on what they want in the big picture here, not just a protest vote in the here and now, but the long-term stability and economic future of this country. And it's going to be a really important election on that front.
Yeah, Senator, you're right. It is going to be an important election, and I'm glad you acknowledge the frustrations, right? We know the votes have consequences, but as I said in my opening editorial, it seems to me, and as you know, one of those centre-right voters, you go, the policy agenda that the Greens have been barking for ages is almost being implemented. Government is bigger, debts are huge, no one seems to talk about that anymore. Our freedoms are being curtailed, we're surrendering to internationalism and globalism. That's the source of the frustration. How do we know we're not going to keep going down this road? I mean, it would be worse if the Greens were there, but how do we rely on the coalition to get us back to where we should be?
Well, I think you can look to a generation of people who are coming through our party who represent, I think, the best of the centre-right tradition. And if they have the opportunity to keep on serving in a government, they will grow in their ability to get the kinds of policies of which you speak into the background and a much more traditional centre-right approach to the foreground. The other thing to observe is that every election is about a series of choices. You don't get to pick the perfect version of the world that you want. You get to pick from a range of things on the table. One is a high taxing, high distribution or redistribution, climate alarmist and anti-region, anti-mining, anti-jobs, let's face it, agenda from a Labor Greens coalition. On the other hand, you'll get the Liberal National Party, which has at its core centre-right beliefs, although I acknowledge that in the context of the pandemic, there's been, a lot of pragmatism in the application of those. And then you have some small parties on the right who can promise the world, but ultimately never deliver. And so I'm sorry to be saying this to you, Cory, as someone who has
been there, done that. I'm over it, Senator. It's all good.
but the truth is, they can tell us what we want to hear, and they can make big promises, and to an extent, they can hold our feet to the fire. But ultimately, the bleeding of numbers from the major coalition parties to those small groups on the centre-right simply delivers Labor and the Greens. And so from the choices that are available to us that are going to be implemented, I know which one I'll be choosing every day of the week.
Yeah, OK. I've got 30 seconds left, so I need a quick answer to what's going to be the toughest question of the year. OK, people are telling me it's unlikely either of the major parties is going to have a majority. That means you've got to form a minority government. Do you do it with the Greens or the Voices of movement? Which one are you going to pick?
Can I return to the private sector?
It's a horrible scenario, isn't it? And look, in all seriousness, Senator, we don't want you to return to the private sector. You are one of the shining lights of this government. You're a voice there. You've got up against it, of course, in your election in Queensland. I think you're number 3 on the ticket, but best of luck with that, because Australia does need you there, and good government needs you there. So thanks for joining me tonight.
Good on you, Cory. Thanks a lot.